We are streaming. We are streaming. We are streaming. Live is streaming soon. Do. Twitter. Do. Stream is in good health. I like that. Stream is in good health. I should start streaming soon. Receiving your content. Your audience will see it. Get ready. Get ready. Is it streaming? I don't know. Hello? Ayo, we're streaming live. All right. Very strange. I like that. It's probably like I think it's on a 60-second delay or something like that. What is it? Is that what it's on? What are we on? Stream options? Yeah, 60, something like that. Cool. That makes complete sense. All right. So what am I doing today? That's a great question. That is a great question. Now that we got the stream going on, this is good. And we should have some people join in. Let's see here. I did a live stream earlier, essentially building an application. I'm gonna do something a little bit different today with it. But I wanted to kind of walk through, I did a Motz Codes live about a year ago or so. I wanna say it's somewhere in my YouTube history. Probably not that far back, because I don't YouTube stream that often. But I wanted to kind of do a refresh on what the heck Bitrise is, why I love Bitrise so much, and kind of do some continuous integration. I want to kind of continuously integrate and build and deploy an application in about 5-10 minutes with Bitrise. So this live stream should maybe be 20-30 minutes. We'll see how long it goes. If you have questions, you can put it right down in the chat room and let me know. 100%. So anyone joining right now, it's probably like, there we go, probably kicking in. I would drink some coffee. All right, so when I talk about Bitrise, I've been using them for a long time. To me, they're all about continuous integration, building your applications, doing all these really cool things. So if I kind of walk through, like, their motto is all about continuous happiness as a service. And to me, I've been using Bitrise for a long time in my mobile applications, and I simply love it. So they want to automate, your mobile application development and just like make easy, super fast. And it's super simple to get a green build. I swear in just 5 minutes. I'm going to show you do this live. We're going to connect to a repo. It could be anywhere. We're going to project scan. We're going to build an app. And this is what I love, though, these really super powerful workflows, which essentially are steps along the way to build and deploy different parts of your application, no matter what you're doing. So you clone, you test an application, you can send a Slack message, you can send to the Xamarin Test Cloud, you can send a hockey app, you can do whatever you want. You can do iOS and Android for Xamarin iOS, Xamarin Android, Xamarin Forms applications. It doesn't matter. No matter what you want to build, essentially, Bitrise supports it. And they have all these integrations, so all over the place: NuGet, AWS, Test Cloud, all that stuff. So let's check this out. Let's actually just jump into the code. I don't want to go through slide decks. That's stupid. All right, so I have an application that we can see here. It's just a Xamarin Android application. Again, it could be any application. It could be iOS. It could be Android. Hey. It could be Android. It could be whatever. And in this instance, it's literally just a Xamarin Android application. It's actually the default blank template. So if I actually pull up the main Android XML here, we can see, there we go, just this layout here of something. There we go. Some notifications, check into Twitters, checking some people watching. I like that. That's good. So we're gonna see this designer. It's literally the file blank application button, but I have added a few NuGet packages. So I added my connectivity plugin. So you kind of get the idea that it's, I have some plugins. It's a little bit more complex of an application, right? So I got some plugins going. I have I could have some components installed if I wanted to, some assets, things like that. Come on. Let's see if the designer is going to pop up. There we go. So it's the hello world blank, click me, nothing special there. But I did do something in here. So inside the main activity, I have this hello world string, and that's the very first thing I set it to. And then I have a little delegate here. So whenever I click on it, it just says how many clicks you had over and over and over again. So if I run this application here, we can run it. I think it's app 1. There we go. It says hello world. And I tap, 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 tap. You get a bunch of clicks. Again, nothing fancy at all on that. Now, this application lives up on my GitHub page. So it's called Bitrise app. There we go. And right now it's just a private repo. It doesn't matter. I just want to kind of show the fact that you can do private repos, public repos, things like that. So the idea is once I start modifying some code, how do I get it from GitHub or somewhere else there it lives and actually build it up and deploy it and get a build that I can put on my actual device, or I could put somewhere else. So kind of wherever I want to go with it. I'm going to move the desk around a little bit here. So here's what I want to do is I'm going to take it, and first I'm going to go to bitrise.io. So when you go to Bitrise, let's see if I can go to the home page. Where's the home page at? Logged in. Let's log out. Let's get a fresh run experience. Sign out. So when you go to bitrise.io, you can learn about Bitrise. So kind of automating everything as a service. Some of their awesome customers, they support Android, iOS, Xamarin. They even support Mac applications, I should say. So if you're building a Xamarin Mac app, they support that too. It's a little bit different setup. Here's the workflow editors. They actually have a full CLI that you can download. They got a really cool shark with a laser on its head. It's pretty great. And the cool thing here is that they manage your entire Mac servers, all that stuff. So you don't have to worry about anything like that. So they have tons of these integrations, and that's what I really like. So you can check the integrations tab, and you can kind of start scrolling down and just looking at all the different stuff that they have. So deploy to S3, APK information, Appetizo, app livery. There's a bunch of Bitrise specific steps, Calabash steps, changing values in a file, running CocoaPods, getting NuGets, installing from a QR code page, deploying to iTunes, fast lanes. You can deploy automatically to the actual app store if you wanted to. It's crazy. It's pretty awesome. So these are all actually built either by Bitrise themselves, or they're open source. Here's one for Raygun, and you can actually tap on the source here, and you can actually see that this step essentially is one built by me. This integration, it's just a shell file, bash file, and you can actually just upload your dsym debug symbol information directly up to Raygun. So you can create these and you can contribute. So here's what's cool. Before I even start this, we'll check out the pricing. So they have a free plan. There's a free plan. We're right here. You get 2 team members, 10-minute builds, 200 builds a month, which is really awesome. Support for all the integrations. You can do 1 build at a time. You can do iOS, Android, Xamarin stuff, all that goodness. Now they also have a pro plan, and you can actually see that there's a coupon code in the actual thing right here. That if you type in resolve-conflict, which is actually a coupon code from the Merge Conflict podcast that I do with Frank, the same exact podcast, they'll give you the same exact coupon, $25 off the Pro plan, which is really good. I think it's for the first month or something like that. But essentially, this will give you unlimited team members, up to 45-minute builds, unlimited builds, a bunch of good stuff. This is what I'm on. I'm on the Pro. All right, let's automate this puppy. So I'm going to log in. Now you can sign up with GitHub, Bitbucket, GitLab, or you can just create a new account. That's what I've done here. Log in. All right. Now I have a bunch of other apps in here already. And if I go into my account settings, you can see that I have, this is my current plan. I've done 48 builds. I don't have any builds running. And I've connected to my Xamarin account, which is pretty cool. So it'll automatically download components and things like that. And I also have a GitHub connection, so you can kind of decide what you want to do. You can register test devices, a whole bunch of stuff. So let me go back here. So the idea, code is on my GitHub, and I want to get it into the Bitrise. So I'm just going to add, and I can add a new app. All right. Now notice that I can actually do Bitbucket if I wanted to connect my Bitbucket account. If I was using GitLab, I can do that. Or I can just give it a Git repository clone. So let's say you're hosting all of your code in Visual Studio Team Services or TFS or something like that. You can actually point it right at your Visual Studio Team Services Git repository, and it's just where it's going to clone from every time. You're going to have to set up some Git hooks and things like that, but that's it. So I have a lot of repos. So I'm going to type in Bitrise app. Boom. So there's a few things that are going to happen here, which all automatically happen. Is they'll add a SSH key for me automatically. This is going to allow a bunch of other additional private repository things for like Fastlane and things like that. It'll say, yeah, and auto add the SSH key for me. It'll allow it to communicate. And then it says, hey, we found that there's a master branch. So there's one branch in here, just master. Do you want to scan that? So let's scan it. Now here's where the cool fun part stuff happens. Is this going to validate? It's going to set up my repository. A bunch of really fun stuff's going to happen. And it's going to figure out like what kind of application this is, like what kind of build should it do, what should be next. Good question from Kerberos. What does 10-minute builds mean? 10-minute builds means essentially we're going to see it happen here, a build. And a build will happen when whenever. So the idea is whenever I commit code and I do a push to my Git backend, or I hit start manually to kick off a build, whenever that build starts, it's going to spin up a new Mac server for me. I don't have to worry about that. And from that moment, it starts up, clones my source code, pulls down my NuGet packages, then builds it, and then dumps out my artifacts. If that falls within 10 minutes, you're totally good on the free account for a single build. And that usually works really well if you're just doing just iOS or just Android applications. It depends how many NuGets, how many packages and things like that you have. If it goes over 10 minutes, then it's just going to stop essentially, and it's going to be done at that point. So it's going to process. And this process here can take a minute or two to set up. And what we expect to have out of this is kind of like a default workflow that will enable us to essentially start a new build, a new thing that's going to happen. And the idea is whenever I commit code, it pushes it off, it starts building, and then there is some output at some point. There we go. All right. So when I click on the collapse or expand logs, we can actually see this kind of first kind of step thing happening. It's downloading my source code. It's Git cloned it. It's essentially running a little application, this project scanner, that will go off and scan to see what type of application it is, and then submit that back over to Bitrise. It's kind of like analyzing, like, hey, what is inside of my project? And this will take a few seconds to spin up because it's going to spin up a whole secure server just for me, if that makes sense. So we're going to follow along, and it should report back and then analyze those results. So there we go, validating. There we go. So here we go. So that scan took about a minute or two, and usually I just set that up. And it says, hey, we've detected it's a Xamarin application. That's cool. You can also manually set stuff up if you wanted to do Mac OS or Xamarin or Android, and I'll just go to the detected. And then it says, hey, we found one solution file. Which one do you want to build? And then do you want debug or release? So we want release. That's good. And here's what I love. They have these things called stacks, and essentially they have a Mac server farm somewhere that they host and manage everything for you automatically. And by default, it'll just put us on the current stable channel of Xamarin. You can modify that here. If I hit edit, and I can say, oh, I want, the current alpha of Xamarin or the current beta of Xamarin on different Mac Sierras with this version of Xcode that's there. I always want the current one, but you can really go in and customize this to what you want. So I'm going to hit next on here, and then I'm going to confirm. Now at this point, we can say we can offer to log in with Xamarin, and I'm already logged in, so I'm logged in there. And you need to log in if maybe you're doing components or something like that and you want to restore them. And then here I'll say, hey, do you want to register a webhook? And this is important because you can register a webhook with GitHub or whatever else you're using, or you can manually set one up to say every time I commit code, start a new build. So we're going to do that here. So set a new webhook. and we're good. So take me to the build that has now kicked off. And this is cool. So they've already started it up for me. We can see the build that's going on, and we can see that whatever the current branch parameters we're in, it's just taking the current primary branch of master. So here's what gets cool is that down here, we can actually follow this output. So we can actually say, hey, okay, so what's going on? The first thing that it does is it activates my SSH key. It goes and clones my code. It comes in, and then there's a script that doesn't do anything but says hello world, which is pretty good. That runs for 3 seconds. Maybe delete that step. But you can just run arbitrary code, which is cool. It'll download any certificates and profile information I need, which is cool. It'll log me into my Xamarin account if I need to. It'll restore all my NuGet packages if I need to. So you can see here it's going to restore my connectivity plugin right there for me. It's going to do a whole bunch of other stuff, download, cache it. So restoring NuGets took 8 seconds. It's going to run the archive, which is kind of like a build step. So think of it as build, but also archive to put out an APK file that's there. And we can just follow along as it builds through these whole steps. Oh, did it finish already? Holy bananas, it's done. Okay, cool. So a file blank application where it actually got my code, downloaded all the additional steps that it did, built the actual package in release mode, and then output the actual APK file. You can actually see the APK files here. That took 73 seconds. So that is 73 seconds. So I still had another almost 9 minutes left of build time that I could do. So as my project grows, obviously it's from file new project, it'll keep growing in length and time and compilation time that it needs. But these are super powerful Macs, so it's pretty fast. So that's pretty good. All right, what else do we have here? So we can download the log, we can get more information, we can ask questions. But what's really cool is if we scroll back to the top, up top, we can actually see there's apps and artifacts, which is cool. And that is essentially anything that is built that we want to keep for later. So in this instance, we want to keep this APK file, and we could just download it right now and we can put it on a phone, but it's not signed or anything like that. I haven't done anything. But so we can go ahead and massage this a little bit. We can come back into the Bitrise app now. So now we can see, oh, here's all the previous builds that I had. I don't want to deploy just yet. Calm down, Bitrise. So here I have one build that took 1 minute, 16 seconds, build number 1. I have a team that I can manage. I have code that I can manage that's inside of here. So API tokens that I could regenerate. There's the Git repository on GitHub. So you can set that all up. And then there's this thing called workflows. And this is where Bitrise becomes really powerful for building. So as I scroll down, each of these steps are what gets executed in this order. And you can see, obviously, clone the repo. There's a bunch of steps, such as some input variables. Here is the Git repository, the Bitrise source destination, and it fills in all these defaults for you, which is really cool. So you don't have to worry about that at all. And what I like here is that you can see that this step is maintained by Bitrise. You can actually see the source code if you wanted to. All the source code for all the steps are available online. And then there's a checkbox, and each step says, should this step run even if a previous step fails? So if you have some cleanup or something that you're like, oh, I want you to always run this or always send me a Slack message, you can say this step should always go. So here you can just run a script file. You can do a certificate. So it downloads certificates, signs into my Xamarin account. It'll restore my NuGet packages. So it says, where's this Bitrise project path? And I'll tell you about this in a second. Then there's an archive, and there's a deploy, which is really nice. And you can come in here and you can say, okay, testers, developers, email addresses. So I can say, hey, send an email. I have a Craigslist email at gmail.com. It's like my junk email. There we go. You can specify email addresses. So I'm just going to put another email address in there. So I'll say, hey, email me when I get a build so I can download it. I'll show you what that looks like. So let's save. So that's the first step, right? Now here's where things get interesting. So if I come back into my repo here and I say, well, it just should be this clicks, or maybe I really want to test out some C#6 interpolation. Just do this here and I'll see what gets executed. There we go. I don't need a string formatted anymore. So we start to clean up some code, right? And then I will save it, and then I'll say update code. There we go. Up, and sync again. So now my code goes up to GitHub. And then what will happen is as soon as that syncs down, I go back over to my Bitrise app. It will now, at this point, we'll wait for it. It has that GitHub webhook. So as soon as the actual sync finishes inside of this GitHub portal, there we go, we should see a new actual deployment happen. Boom. And it's going to kick off a new one. We got a good question here. So Karabos again asks, if I have a private repo on Bitbucket or GitHub or whatever, and I'm using Bitrise, is all the information private, and can people get to my source code? Absolutely not. So everything is private. I should say, yes, everything is private. So when this build kicked off right here, we can see the actual Git, it was GitHub, this commit, update code was the number here. It spins up a private server for me that's cleaned off at the end, right? So it spins up my repo, and then it will download my source code, anything that I have, and then it will build the application, and then essentially any of the output, like the APK file, it puts up on their secure servers for you. You can say don't deploy this or don't archive anything in your app, but I always do because I'm always using that. So the build kicks off, it finishes, and then that machine is wiped. So it has to re-download your source code every single time. It has to re-download your packages every single time. There, yeah. Also, Pwn to Own asks, do you know if it's possible to configure steps to run in parallel? So steps always have to run in sequence. There's no two at the same time type of thing. They're always one after the other because it's like a workflow of in and out. So there we go. So that one again took 1 minute, 20 seconds. So you can see there's like maybe a 3-4 second variance there. But again, the next part is what comes really cool. So there's a few things that we can do here. When I start building out this workflow, we can see on the left-hand side, I have things like code signing, secret environment variables, app environment variables, triggers. So the first thing I can do is I can say, hey, it would really be great if every single time I committed code, if I went in and maybe bumped my version numbers, maybe I could replace some private key or something into my source code. And then also sign the package, right? Take my key store and sign it so I could actually install it on a device. That would be really pretty awesome, right? So what will happen here is the source code will be downloaded onto this secure server. And before it builds my application, it will actually update the code on the server, not on GitHub or not anywhere else, but on the actual server. So I'm swapping out code. So this means that me as a developer, I never have to worry about updating version numbers or stuff like that. I can just use a unique code from Bitrise. So here's what I can do is I can come into this code signing here. And if I have a provisioning profile or a code signing identity, the iOS stuff, I just add them there. Or if you have an Android key store, I can just say, hey, give me a key store. I'm going to upload one here from my desktop. I just have a key store that I use. And we just need to enter the passwords and stuff. So this is just a public key that I use for the build demos. So the password is build 1234, very secure. Key store alias is build 2016, and then build 1234. And here's what's really nice is notice that the download URL, Bitrise will already assign the key store URL, the key store password, these essentially environment variables that I can use later on in my code to do the signing. So I'll save this metadata. Now, Bitrise has some of those reserved automatically in there, but you can create your own. So if I tap on secret environment variables, I can come in and say my, secret. There we go. And I could say, ha, 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 ha. That's a great one. And then save it. And then I can use that variable later on in my code, and I'll show you that. So for instance, the secret environment variables may be things like maybe it's your API key to Hockey app, or maybe it's your API key to Test Cloud or stuff like that. So these will get encrypted here and when you go to replace the variables. And again, no one can see your build results besides you, so nothing is public, so it doesn't really matter all too much. But usually I like to still put the private keys and things like that in here. The app environment variables are just non-encrypted type keys that don't really care if they're private or not. So for instance, you can see the Bitrise project path is here. The Bitrise Xamarin configuration is release. And this is kind of, think of it as keys in like a web config that you would use and refer later on in different workflows. So for instance, if I wanted to say manifest path, I could know that, hey, on my desktop, on my computer, and my GitHub, on my Bitrise app, there we go. If I go into app1/packages, or not packages, properties, there we go. If I go into app1/properties, so if I go app1/properties/Android manifest.xml, I am then saving it in this one place, right? So app1/app1.solution, app1/properties/Android manifest.xml, and then I can reference that later on. So check this out. So if I come into my Bitrise workflow editor again, I can do a few things. Notice that in between each step, well, one, I could drag and drop things around if I needed to. This Xamarin archive here will automatically look for my solution, my configuration. And usually what I do is I have one specific to Android and one specific to iOS. So it'll just say, hey, based on this solution, run iOS or just Android if you want to. And you can do other build configurations and things like that in here. You can mess around with a whole bunch of stuff. So I'll say, hey, listen, before you build this application, let's go ahead and add a step. So in between NuGet Restore and the Archive Manager, I'm going to say, hey, I need to add a step. And here you can scroll down and see what's officially supported by the project type. I always like to just turn that off. I don't know, I'm just weird. I just give me everything. And I'll say like manifest. Is there a version? There we go. Set Android manifest version, code, and name. I wrote this step. So if you open this up code again, essentially I want to update the Android manifest and bump the version number. So I'll add that workflow. And it'll say, hey, you need to point me to your Android manifest file. So that's lucky because I can insert the manifest path. Boom. There's a version code. And by default, it will use the Bitrise build number for me automatically. If you need an offset, you can set an offset. And then the version name is whatever is human readable. So here, for instance, I can say 1.0. The build number. I could also do something is, let's say I wanted to change this. Let's say this hello world was a key and I wanted to swap out a key because often you don't want to check in keys into GitHub or whatever. So you're always swapping them out. So here, for instance, I could say, hey, before you build it, let's do change value in file. So I'll say add to workflow and it'll say, give me the file path. And this would be another one of those things that I want to do, but I'll do app1/main activity CS. So app1/main activity.cs. So it doesn't have to be a variable in there. The old value I'll say is a string that I copied out of hello world. And I'll do a new value of hello YouTube Motz Codes live. Boom. And then what I can say is, hey, show me the old file and show me the new file and mark it fail if you can't find it for some reason. Going pretty good. Updated my version numbers. Gonna do a string replace in here for fun. And after I build it and before I deploy it, go ahead and let's sign. So I can re-sign, there we go, sign an APK. Now this becomes pretty cool. So when I sign it, it will automatically know, hey, based on that archive step, it will output the APKs. And this is the default APK path. It'll automatically set my key store. It'll set my password, my alias to private things that are Bitrise specific. And I'm good, right? So I can just hit save again. There we go. All right. Now what I can do is I can come back into my build and I can kick off a new build if I wanted to inside of here. So I'm going to schedule a new build, kick it off. And now this will take a little bit more time because it's going to download some more packages, do a few more little things, do the signing. So it should take about a minute and a half, something like that. And I think someone is maybe, I don't know, doing some vacuuming in my apartment. We'll see. Cool. All right, so we're doing a bunch of stuff. And you can see it's like really fast to spin up servers and re-download all the source code and things like that. So we'll let this go. Just takes a minute. So we'll let it go. And with that, we'll let it kick it off. See if anyone else has any questions. Yeah, I don't know if they ever plan on doing anything in parallel just because of the process and the CLI. You can download the CLI separately though and probably modify and tweak it a little bit or something. I don't know. I've never had a need to run things in parallel. Maybe like building an iOS and Android app at the same time. But even on my main machine, I think, MS Build and things gets a little bit upset with you when that happens. It's just kind of like a source code thing. You know what I mean? Now, what you could though do is you could, if you were on a plan and you had the ability to run two things at the same time, you could kick off different workflows and say, this one builds iOS and Android and two servers would be spun up for you or something. It's probably not what you're looking for, but all right. So this one built, it got some new steps. And we can see here everything was successful. So it downloaded the certs. It set the Android package, the value key. And actually, if I scroll up, this is what gets real cool. Okay, so there we go. Got some scripts, did some things, Android packages. There we go. So the first thing here, it says, hey, this is your third build. We're going to upgrade the version code to 3 and 1.0.3. Done. The change value, it says, hey, we found string hello world, and we're going to change it to hello YouTube Motz Codes live. And it'll actually output the old source code because I marked that option in there. And then the new file, boom, it updated the source code in place that will be then compiled and then output for me. And of course, it compiles and outputs my APK. Cool. So now I can see that I have a APK file and a signed APK file. So I could download this on my desktop. I could do whatever I want. Does this work? Well, let me see if I can download this on my desktop. Downloads. I'm curious. Kurbos, I'm not sure what you mean by CI on Xamarin Studio as far as CI goes, because Xamarin Studio doesn't do continuous integration, so I'm not sure what you mean there. Matt, this just says iOS and Android, no Windows builds. Maybe look at like VSTS or something like that, because they're using Mac build servers for that. All right, so if I come back in here, I should be able to now uninstall. Does this work? Right. Oh, does that work? Oh, I don't know. I was hoping that would work where I could just download the package. Oh, it did it. It totally installed it. I love Visor. So now I've drag and dropped a new file around. It's installed it, and boom, there's the new application coming from Bitrise, signed completely. I could ship that to the App Store. It's a beautiful application. And you can see that it actually has the new source code, right? I didn't go back into my code. I didn't do anything. I'm replacing variables. I'm updating my version numbers. I'm pretty sure if I go into, let's see if that has it in your app info. Yeah, 1.0.3. And you can tell right here that that is the actual version code that's on there automatically. That got bumped by Bitrise automatically. All right, I'll go a few minutes or so here. If you guys have more questions, let me know on Bitrise. So because things get even more powerful, right? So at this point, what I've done is I've just created a single workflow, but I often set up multiple workflows for an application and then do some triggers. So often I like to do a dev branch, right? So I'll create a dev workflow. And often in my dev workflow, I could do something like, all right, so after we build, it would be great to then send those to Test Cloud, for instance. So I could add a Test Cloud step inside of here and added the API keys and device information and all that stuff and hit save, right? And it's not going to run, but what's cool here is that we now have a primary and a dev. So how I normally do things is I like to go in here and edit these triggers. So I'm going to edit the trigger settings. And what's cool is that there's a whole trigger guide that you can read about, but you can have triggers for pushes to a specific branch, for a pull request, or for a tag. that you have on your code. So for instance, I could add a trigger. I could say, you know what, only build primary when master is pushed to. Else for star, let me push my dev branch. Okay. So now if I save this, there we go. And I come back into, and I create a new branch. Let's say I create, oh, not in there. I come into here and I say dev branch. There we go. There we go. Now I'm in some new branch, and that probably would actually trigger a new build maybe. Let me see. I think it's just on push, so probably not, maybe. Oh, it is. So when you create a new one, so now we can see that, hey, dev branch is triggering the dev actual build there. If I was to come in and I would say clicks and change this on master and then push more updates. There we go. Commit that directly to master, which is never a good idea. Push that off. What we're going to see, whoa, zoomed in, is that the new build, because I'm only one build at a time for any of my applications. So it's all of your applications, one build at a time. And that's most likely if you have multiple applications, you'd want a bigger tier of it. Once this syncs, boom, it's on hold. So master will kick off. Oops. Yeah, I did that wrong. That's why. Whoops. So I can cancel that one. Let's try it again. Sorry, my workflow was incorrect. Abort. Let me go back into my workflow editor and go into my triggers. That is my fault. Triggers. Yes. So there we go. First kick off master if master is pushed to, else anything else. So now if I do that again, right? So let's do this again. Do this one more time. Cool. Push it one more time. And what we should see, if I've set up these trigger patterns correct, that now this branch will actually kick off the other one. There we go. So we have the dev branch, we have the aborted one, this one's going. This should actually fail because most likely, yeah, I didn't set up a test cloud at all, obviously, for that. So now when this synchronizes, there we go. Now we have a new master primary getting kicked off when I do that, and that will be successful. You can filter by branches on here. So I'm like, oh, only show me the dev branch or only show me master branch. You know, you can filter these things on here. You can add multiple people to your team. But again, all of the source code is private when it's downloaded. You could use an open source GitHub project. You could use open source projects. You could use closed source projects. You could use private Git, anything that you want. It doesn't really matter. It's totally up to you. You can say if you're walking or whatever, things like that. Back and forth. I can go into the, my settings and adjust the teams and my workflow that's in here. And these things are really super powerful. So I can show you what some of these looks like. So Pwn to Own says, is it possible to find combined build steps so I can use them in different workflows, or can I concatenate workflows to output workflow 1 to workflow 2? So, well, actually Victor is in the chat from Bitrise. And that's a good question. They have an awesome Slack that I'm in all the time asking them questions. I don't know if they have something to kick off workflow 2 from workflow 1. That's a good question. Kind of like I have this test one. Victor probably knows most likely. I think the answer may be yes, actually. That might be something that they wanted to do, but now do. So for instance, I have a bunch of apps that this is how I work on every single day. I never, ever build anything manually or update it to my device. My scoreboard application, all of it is built inside of Bitrise, every single bit of it, 100%, even my failed builds, things like that are in here. These ones do something very similar. So if I look at the workflow here, I have a primary and a feature branch, very similar. So I activate, I script, I restore NuGets, I restore components. I build both iOS and Android at the same time. So I update my Android version, my iOS versions. I build Android, I build iOS, I assign my APK. I update and upload my dsum package to Raygun, and then I deploy to Bitrise. You can also here, if you wanted to, you could deploy to Hockey App. Let me go ahead and turn that off. The new filter I'm not a big fan of. The Hockey apps, you can say, oh, just deploy to iOS or Android to Hockey App, right? So you can deploy it there. You can send an email, you can send a Slack notification. So if you go in here and you're like, oh, I really want, Slack. Just send a message to Slack or Translate or whatever you want to do. A whole bunch of cool stuff. And you can see this is actually cool. This is an existing app, and you can see this little update. This is what I love. If you tap on it, it automatically did it. That's funny. You can see that these are actually versioned. So Bitrise, unless you want it to always use the latest version of a step, it won't actually do that. It'll tell you that there's an update to that step available, and you can go ahead and update it, or just click the little button to update it on your flow. So I bet if I go over to the feature branch, which by the way, in feature branch, I don't upload my DSIM to Raygun, right? Because it's a feature branch. I'm not going to ship it to the App Store, but it's my test branch. So that's kind of the difference there, is like usually my dev or feature branches have less or something more that is going on. So now I've updated it. Now I'm good to go. Boom. I think that's about it. I think that's all I want to show. It's there. And what I love about Bitrise is it's just so super simple to use for iOS and Android applications that are there. And you know, I think actually, like Matt, like you think, like, to be honest, I mean, if things are working great in Atveyor, it's good. I use Atveyor for all my libraries, for instance. So my Bitrise apps, everything I build is inside of Bitrise, all my mobile applications. And while you can build libraries inside of Bitrise, like if you're just creating an iOS or Android library or Mac library, you could totally build it just inside of Bitrise, and you can package it up and do that stuff. But I use Atveyor for that because it's all Windows builds, and I have tons of Windows builds and things like that. But if you're really looking to do just iOS and Android builds, like I just love Bitrise. And now remember, Bitrise isn't like trying to be, and there you go. There's the chaining workflows. Oh, let me see if I can just look at it. I could probably do that. So chaining, let's see. If it's a workflow, yeah. One day, if you have Mac, if you could ever build a binary on Mac, let's see if you can do chain. Is that in there? Change working. There's probably, well, Victor put some links. Let's see what he says. They have this really cool dev center. Chaining workflow links. Okay, so it's possible to chain workflow links. Basically, you have a workflow. Do you do deploy? You do after. There's examples of how to do it in here. Pretty straightforward. Not too long. Cool. So you can totally do it. Yeah. So I think that's what I mostly use Bitrise for, is all my applications. If you're doing like a UWP application, you could totally do like VSTS or Atveyor or something like that. But what I love is that Bitrise is super optimized for mobile, for iOS and Android. And it's just so drop dead simple. Like I just automated this app, deployed it, did all this in like less than a half an hour while explaining it to all of you guys and gals on the stream. So I love it. I'm all about it. And you can use that coupon code resolve-conflict, which actually, because yeah, on Merge Conflict, the podcast that I do with Frank, Bitrise was really, really awesome. And they did a lot of awesome sponsorships. So here you had a big, awesome sponsorship banner. When you clicked on that, I'm pretty sure it's still live. Yeah, there it is. Resolve Conflict, because you're an awesome, I'm sure everyone on the stream is an awesome, amazing listener to Merge Conflict at mergeconflict.fm, the podcast that I do every week with Frank. But yeah, you get $25 off the pro plan, or you can try out the free plan. Just check it out, put your code in there, see how it goes. They're super transparent about updates, everything that's in there. I mean, it's super good. I love it. It's super duper good. Cool. And again, like the nice part about Bitrise is the integration parts. So for me, I use Bitrise for building and deploying my apps. For me, testing, Bitrise isn't like your end-to-end DevOps solutions where they're offering, analytics and crash reporting and like all this other stuff, something like a mobile center. But they just do building, continuous integration, amazing. And all those integrations, like me building steps, which I've never done before, took just like a few hours to get up and running and figuring out their CLI. Anyways, that is it for me on this stream. I hope you guys love some Motz Codes live. This is my big update for continuous integration with Bitrise. I've been using them for, oh my goodness, forever now. It feels like. I love them. Check them out, bitrise.io. And until next time, I'm James.